my experiences living up. Do you want to, I don't know, introduce the show and then I introduce myself?
Yes.
What about that?
Hi, I'm Zoe Ye, a human being who failed to live a conventional life. I have a deep interest in people and their choices of life. In my podcast, I'll be having conversations with individuals who are open to talk about their mental journeys in life. This season is called My Mental Journey of Migration. 8 guests will share their experiences of living in different cultures.
Hi, this is Sarah. So where to start? I am an astronomer. I work in Leiden at the Leiden Observatory, which is part of the University of Leiden here in the Netherlands. And I've been here for 3.5 years. But I'm originally from Australia. I grew up in Perth, which is on the west coast of Australia. And then I moved for my undergrad degree and I also did my master's in astronomy in Canberra, which is on the east coast, but it's a bit inland. It's quite a small town. It's the capital of Australia. A lot of people make fun of it because it's boring, but I quite enjoyed my time there. It's got lots of nice nature and like kangaroos around, and I really liked studying astronomy there. Anyway, and so then I decided I wanted to do my PhD, and I moved to Germany to study in Heidelberg at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy. I moved in 2016, beginning of 2016, to Germany, and I was there for 3.5 years. And now after my PhD, I started a postdoc in Leiden in 2019.
In 2019, so just before the COVID.
Yeah, and I was here about 6 months before COVID, which was nice. It gave me enough time to get involved with different things happening at the university and make a few friends before we went into lockdown.
Why did you make the decision to go to Germany?
Well, I wanted to become a professional astronomer, and I guess in academia as well as in maybe other industries, they tell you that it looks good to have international experience. It's good to get ideas from other cultures, how they do things, different countries, and to build your network. So I thought, okay, well, I have to go overseas. And then I decided I wanted to go to Europe because culturally it was more similar to Australia than, for example, Asia. And there was a lot of programs that are in English. And so I started asking around if anyone knew any positions. Yeah, I got in contact with a professor in Germany, and she gave me an interview and then offered me a position. And in the field of galaxy evolution, there was a few universities which is what I study. I study how galaxies change over cosmic time. I use observations from big telescopes. And so this was one of the project that she offered was something that was exciting to me. It was using radio astronomy, which is a field that I want to get more involved with. And I was in Heidelberg, which has a very good reputation.
Yeah,
Max Planck Institute, also good reputation. So yeah, I accepted. And I'd never been to Germany before. And that was quite stressful because I hadn't started to apply to other positions yet. I had 2 weeks to make the decision, and I spoke to a lot of people. There was a lot of people I knew or found who had spent time living in Heidelberg and working at the Max Planck Institute. And so I asked them all the questions, how they enjoyed it, how did they find living in Germany, was it easy, was it hard? So I got a lot of opinions, also from people who worked with my supervisor, and there were some mixed opinions, like,
oh, really?
Yeah, like she is German, and there was some people like, the Germans are very direct, which is a stereotype I heard, but I thought I would be prepared for it. Like my mother is also very direct, so I was like, yeah, I can cope with that, and I did, and it was hard at times. that was maybe one difference between British Australian, and German is the directness, as well as the Dutch. They're also very.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And so sometimes I had other Australian colleagues who would get emails from my supervisor, and they would say, "Is she mad at me? Like, did I do a really bad job?" And I was like, no, that's just how she talks. Like, she never would give me a compliment or say good job. It would always just be like, here are the things to improve, and go do that.
It sounds like when you were in Australia, probably people will give you
positive comments, encouraged to think.
Yes. I mean, I think it depends who you're talking to, who you work with, but my supervisor in Australia she had spent some time in America, in the US, and some time in Australia, and she was much more, I would always leave meetings from her feeling more positive about myself, because she'd be like, you can do this is the best. She'd be very excited about my work life. Yeah, and that suited me quite well, particularly if I'm so I also suffer from depression, and if I'm in a bad mood, then it can be really nice to have some positive feedback.
You have a lot of students, and from what I heard, they really like you as a supervisor.
Yeah, I try to. Yeah, I really love supervising students. So I've had quite a few different master's students do projects with me, and summer students do internships. Yeah, I take this philosophy of giving positive feedback to heart. Like, even though the students are amazing and phenomenal, like, they need someone to tell them that. I don't know, I think in this culture where everyone's so competitive, there's a lot of bullying, perhaps, toxic environment, it can make a big difference to someone's, not only their day, but their week and year and their career. I always pass on compliments. I mean, and they're always true. I don't make up.
Can I ask how many students out of your class decided to leave Australia?
So in my master's program, it was just the very beginning. So I was the first graduate, so it's hard to compare. But if I think of the whole physics cohort, not just astronomy, I think, a few people left for their PhD. I know some people went to the UK. That's a very common, I think, for Australians to go to the UK, because they're English speaking, culturally quite similar. And a couple of people went to the US. I had one friend who was 1 year below me, following a similar path, and she also went to Germany. She went to study. So it's not too, I don't know. I feel like...
But you were not alone, but it's not a majority.
No. And of course, I didn't know anybody with Germany. Except for, but I didn't move alone. I moved with my husband. So that made it a lot easier, like, that I was never alone. We had a nice 12-year relationship, and it didn't work out. I don't regret it. Also that friend who moved to Germany, she also got married. So a lot of people, if you move countries and you have a partner, then you can face the visa problems, but it's a lot easier if you're married, because, for example, Germany, there it's especially easier to get a visa for your partner if you're married. I think in the Netherlands you can get, even if you're not married, but you have to be a registered partner or show evidence.
I don't think you have to be a registered partner, but you have to demonstrate that you have been together for 1 year or 2 years, and then you have physically met each other.
It can't just be an online relationship. Interesting. Anyway, so I think a lot of my friends, if you think about it, get married for visas. I mean, not just for visas, they also love each other.
So your first stop was Germany. Did you find a huge culture shock?
Yeah, some cultural differences, like I mentioned, more direct. I found it quite frustrating. There was a lot of bureaucracy. A lot of things are done on paper. Like, you have to send a letter to get this done, reply, and everything is done on paper. And there's a lot of rules that you have to follow. People do things a particular way, because that is the only way and the best way. And if you don't do them that way, they will shout at you. And there was a lot of...
literally shouting?
Yeah. Well, at least it sounded like shouting if it's in German. Like, if you cross the road at a red traffic light, people will shout at you. You're not allowed to do that. There were lots of rules that I had to get used to. Like, shops would be closed on Sundays, and everything would be closed on Sunday. So you have to do your shopping before Sunday. And you can't make noise after, I think it was 10 p.m. And you can't make noise on Sunday, because that's quiet day. So you can't take out your glass to the recycling trash, because that makes too much noise, and people open their windows and shout at you for making noise. So I kind of, all these differences did make me feel a bit quite anxious to try new things. That being said, I still felt like it was a Western culture. So a lot I could understand, like basic courtesy based on the context. Even if I couldn't understand what was being said, I knew what was going on around me.
Have you thought about learning German so that you can shout back?
So I did. I at the Max Planck Institute, they offered free classes. I think it was twice a week. So I joined the beginner class. And that was a really nice way also to make friends with other expats. I did that for my first year. I learned German but I didn't practice too much because I found it really hard to juggle like the studies and working and learning German and living in the country was very draining. I didn't put too much pressure on myself to do my homework and pretty hard with the German. And the second year I kind of gave up. But then in my last year, I had another friend from Australia who also moved to Heidelberg, and she started the class again. And she said there was only like 3 people in the class, so they got a lot of time to talk, like to practice speaking.
That's nice.
So I decided to join in again and not put too much pressure on myself to get everything right, to learn the grammar, but just to practice speaking. And yeah, so my German is basic, but functional. My Dutch, not so much. Similar, like when I moved here and I joined the class, and then Corona started, so the class was online.
Oh.
And then we just kind of lost motivation because we weren't going out of the house, we weren't interacting with society, so I didn't have a reason to learn Dutch, or I didn't have the motivation. But now I'm considering taking it up again. But here I found like people are a lot more forgiving about you not learning Dutch. Like I had quite a few Dutch friends and they would say, why would you bother learning Dutch? Everybody speaks English, like don't worry about it. Dutch is a silly language. Whereas in Germany, if they found out that I was living there and I still didn't speak German, they would not be happy.
They're going to shout at you.
I'm so traumatized.
It just made me feel like...
Sure.
Maybe I felt like I have to do the right thing and please everybody. Yeah.
Do you feel happier living in Netherlands than in Germany?
Yeah, definitely. I guess that social anxiety that I had, I don't have that as much because I think here the Dutch don't follow the rules as closely to the letter. So if I break a rule accidentally, it's no big deal. No one's gonna shout at me. Or maybe they do, but it doesn't sound as angry because Dutch doesn't sound as angry as German. And also so if someone's telling me some instructions, I can say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Do you speak in English? Most of the people do speak English and are really proud that they speak English, and so will be really happy to switch to English. And as I said, that wasn't the case in Germany.
Do you feel happier in
the
Netherlands?
And I've also found it a lot more easier to get involved in events. So I'm in a choir, for one. That's been a nice way to meet locals. There are other things I'm more able to do here. So, for example, I feel like the LGBTQ, there's a lot more things for me to do here. Like, I can go to parties, go to different events, meet people. I don't know if that was true in Germany. I don't think there was any gay bars in Heidelberg. There was like once a month, one of the clubs would have a queer event. In Heidelberg, it was also a small town like Leiden, but it was further to travel if you wanted to go to bigger towns. Right here, I feel like it's quite easy to go to Amsterdam or Utrecht and go to a nice party. I'm also been able to make more friends.
Did you experience any reverse culture shock?
I remember once when I did a trip back home and I went shopping at the local mall with my sister and mom, and I got confused because there were so many people around me with the same accents and the same kind of height and blonde hair, and I had gotten used to being the only person with my accent, and so I thought it was my sister everywhere, but it was just everyone looked and sounded like me, and I thought that was sad. Like, I really like feeling special, like feeling different, especially I guess in my friend group here overseas. I make friends with other expats as well as local, and I love how everyone's coming from a different culture. I miss that. Also, in Perth, the weather was suspiciously beautiful every day. Like, it was 30 degrees and sunny and just day after day. Here, it's cloudy. I definitely feel the seasonal affective disorder. Like, I'm much more depressed over winter, and then but you kind of don't notice it so much. And then when spring comes, I feel just so much lighter. I'm like, I have more energy. So, I remember the first spring that I had in Germany, I saw the new growth the color green, it's light green plants. I just hadn't seen that color before in Australia. I don't know. I feel like all the plants in Australia are brown. Like have a tint. They're green, but they have a tint of brown.
Because of sun?
Yeah. Because it's so hot and dry.
I've never been to Australia.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big continent, so that you do have a big variation. More tropical, some that are desert, forest. Yeah. I also felt like when I moved to Germany, I was like, wow, this is feels like the land of fairy tales. Like the forests and the castles. And then I remembered a lot of the fairy tales were written by the Brothers Grimm. They were German. So that makes sense that it has like this fairy tale vibe. Yeah, my ex-husband really liked history, so we would spend a lot of time in museums, exploring like castles when we could. So yeah, Germany is pretty cool too.
Despite all the things.
Despite all the bad things.
Germany is a cool place.
Maybe I will talk a little bit about like the last time I went back home, which was April 2020, which was the first time I was allowed to go home since 2022. Like that was when Western Australia opened their borders. So there had been like 2 years of... So here in Europe and in other places in the world, the corona restrictions being taken away, like people were stopping to wear masks in some places. And there in Perth they were having their first wave because they opened the borders. So before that, they didn't really have corona. It was a really difficult few years being so far away from my family and not being able to go home, even if I wanted to. Like there weren't flights and then also just like the different experiences that we were having. Like we were in lockdown over here. It was kind of hard to relate to each other and that felt quite isolating. And then it was I found it quite amusing when I was there and it was the first wave of things and there was like, yeah, I think it went well because everyone had their vaccination, so there wasn't any hospitalization.
I have a question. It just came into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
As an Australian, did you feel quite isolated?
In general.
In general?
Yeah, so I think that's something that I've noticed recently when I'm reflecting on life here in the Netherlands versus life in Australia. I didn't feel that when I was growing up in Australia because that's all I knew. But now I feel like, yeah, Australians are very isolated. Whereas here I feel like I'm a citizen of the world. It's very easy to go to many different countries and there are people from a lot of different countries living here. I'm more aware, perhaps, of global issues. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like in Australia people kind of feel safe because they're like, we're an island.
Nothing can hurt us.
Nothing can hurt us. Like we'll just, yeah. Which is not true. And when I look at fossil fuel industry in Australia, I'm so ashamed. I just mean like oil and gas and other fossil fuels. Like Australia's one of the largest emitters per capita in the world. Yeah, so I don't like that.
Do you want to go back to your country, Australia?
This is a hard question and one that I'm grappling with at the moment in my life because there are a lot of pros and cons to both the Netherlands and Australia. Pros for Australia are the weather is lovely for me and all my family lives there and I don't have any language barriers, so I have the right to work there and these are really strong points for me to move there. And then on the other hand in the Netherlands, like I've made a lot of really good friends and I think that's really valuable. I feel a bit more freedom. I don't need to have a car to get around. The healthcare system here is a lot better. For me, I like to use the mental health facilities. Like I get therapy every week. I see my psychiatrist, talk about my medications, I test. I get all these stuff done and it's covered by my health insurance. Whereas in Australia, that wouldn't all be covered by my health insurance. I'd have to pay out of pocket. And so that would be very expensive. So that's a big plus for Europe, but also visas. I can't just take any job. Unless I marry someone.
Do you want to marry a Dutch person?
Well, I don't like the institution of marriage, as we talked about before. But I would be open for getting it.
If there is an Australian girl seeking whether she should come to Germany or Netherlands to start her new degree or a new life, what would you say to this person?
I would say to do it. She'll learn a lot about herself, about other cultures. I would say it might help to learn German if you're going to go to Germany. And yeah, you can get in touch.
Thank you for sharing this.
Thanks for interviewing me.
We're going to enjoy the sunshine.
Bye, everyone.
In our next episode, we'll have Zephyr. They grew up in London, spent years in the US, and now work in the Netherlands. Zephyr is going to share their personal journey of self-discovery and exploring their gender identity. Join us as they bravely discuss coming out as a trans person after moving to the Netherlands. Don't miss out!